Everyone, welcome to Preparing Forms for your NSF ATE proposal. It's my pleasure to welcome you and our panelists, but first let me thank our sponsors. ATE Central is the host for today's webinar. They're providing the system, the Adobe Connect system. Thank them very much. You can find out more about the services they provide to the ATE community at atecentral.net. And also, we acknowledge the support from the National Science Foundation for this series. Let me introduce to you Elaine Kraft, the principal investigator of the Mentor Connect project. Welcome, Elaine. Please open up the webinar and introduce your co-presenters as well.
Thank you. And hello, everyone. As Mike said, I am Elaine Kraft, principal investigator for the Mentor Connect project. Thank you for joining us in this rather strange time of COVID-19. We are certainly grateful for the technology that allows us to keep things moving forward. Today's webinar is designed to guide you through the preparation of forms associated with the submission of an NSF grant proposal. While most of these forms are not unique to the NSF ATE program, some documents and instructions for how you should complete forms are specific to ATE. Our goal is to help you prepare competitive grant proposals and avoid common mistakes as you prepare and submit your proposal. This is important because errors in submitting required information as specified can result in having your proposal returned without review. At a minimum, reviewers will notice the lack of attention to detail, and that could influence how they view your proposal overall. The Mentor Connect team will provide guidance for completing the required forms, but please be reminded that we are not speaking on behalf of the National Science Foundation. The opinions we express are our own. We will share information from NSF publications, as well as from conversation with program officers and our own experience. Joining me today are co-principal investigators Ellen Haas and Emery DeWitt. Emery also serves as the project manager for Mentor Connect. Mentor Connect team members have many years of experience in completing the forms that we will be discussing with you today. Now I'd like to ask you to use the chat box that Mike described and let us know how many people are in the room with you viewing this webinar. The webinar system can only capture logins, so thank you for helping us determine how many people are actually in the audience today. Well, it's great to see that you are all sheltering in place and staying separated. Usually we have people watching these webinars in teams and groups, but you are all distancing yourself today and are coming in as onesies, and I think that's just great. Thank you. First, I would like to give you an overview of what we will be discussing today. We will be covering forms and related documents that are required for all NSF ATE proposals. You can see from this diagram that the heart of any proposal is the project description. Some people refer to this as the narrative, and we may use both terms during today's presentation. The project summary is your elevator speech, so to speak, for your project. It is a short one-page overview of your project. Ellen will share some information about these two project components later in the webinar, but they are not our emphasis today. Also, there are two important proposal documents that we will not be discussing today: budget forms and the budget justification. These particularly critical components of a proposal were covered in a separate webinar that we provided earlier this year. The budget and budget justification webinar recording and a tutorial derived from that webinar are available on the Mentor Connect website. Emery will tell you more about how to access Mentor Connect resources later in this program. So, what are we discussing today? The cover sheet, project data form, biographical sketches, current and pending support forms, facilities, equipment, and other resources form, references cited, data management plan, list of collaborators, and the supplemental documents, which are a little bit like appendices to a proposal. Each item serves a specific purpose. We will walk you through each one and help you understand what is required. Our desire is to help you better understand these forms and how to avoid some errors frequently seen by program officers and reviewers. The bottom line is the careful preparation of forms contributes to a proposal that is more competitive overall. I thought an example might help you understand why forms are not a trivial part of your grant proposal. The numbers in this example are from a typical project proposal that was submitted to NSF ATE program several years ago. The proposal was 86 pages long. Of those 86 pages, the project description or narrative filled 15 pages, which is the maximum allowable length for this component of an ATE proposal. The project summary is restricted to 1 page. Budget forms for a 3-year project will take up 4 pages, which is a budget for each year and a cumulative budget page for the entire proposal. The budget justification filled 3 pages in this example, so we have accounted for 23 pages of the proposal. Forms and supplementary documents make up the remaining 63 pages, or 73% of this sample proposal. As you can see, the majority of the overall proposal will be made up of forms and supplementary documents. This is no small amount of work, so get started on these forms right away. They take some time and need to be prepared thoughtfully. Now, we have another question for you. Mike, if you'll launch a poll, we'd like to actually see how many of our Mentor Connect participants are in our audience today. Well, we are certainly delighted to have so many of our Mentor Connect participants with us today. We are also delighted and extend a special welcome to other participants. If you are not already working with Mentor Connect to learn about grant writing and how to increase competitiveness of your NSF ATE proposal, we encourage you to investigate this opportunity. I'm now going to turn the program over to Emery to get us started.
Hello, I'll start with the read first and read often. I think we went ahead one. There we go. I'm going to go back. Here we go. Sorry about that. So read first and read often. 2 resources that you should refer to over and over again are the Advanced Technological Education Program Solicitation and the Proposal and Award Policies and Procedures Guide, known by the acronym PAPPG. The newest version of the PAPPG, NSF 20-1, will become effective June 1, 2020. While the PAPPG covers everything you need to know to submit a proposal and manage a project at any division at the National Science Foundation, the AT solicitation includes information that is critical to ensuring that you meet all of the requirements that are specific to the AT program. Read the solicitation. The current solicitation will expire following the October 1st, 2020 proposal submission date. We will all be eager to see what opportunities the next solicitation will provide. We recommend that you print out and read the AT solicitation and have it handy while you prepare your proposal. This advice applies to faculty who will serve as principal investigators as well as the grant writers. As you work to submit your proposal in the NSF online system called FastLane, you will want to keep the FastLane helpline number handy, as you see at the bottom of the screen. Even before you think about starting on forms in FastLane, meet as a team to discuss the following. Decide on one person to handle information input in FastLane. principal investigator, and authorized organizational representative, or AOR, should cross-check and sign off completeness before submission. Register your institution with FastLane and get your FastLane ID. Note that your FastLane ID is the same ID you use to access research.gov. You will go back and forth between these two NSF systems while uploading and submitting your proposal. Who is your college's authorized organizational representative? Know or decide who will fill this role early. It must be someone who's authorized to speak for you and on behalf of the college in submitting the proposal. You can enter or upload information in FastLane, delete it, and upload or redo with different information up until the proposal is finally submitted to NSF. So, since you have all this editing flexibility, there are many, many forms to complete. As Elaine said, you should get started with these forms sooner than later. I want to draw your attention to the light bulb icon that you'll see throughout the webinar. These are tips and tricks from the Mentor Connect team. These reminders will help you avoid errors and should make the process easier. So now back to the Proposal and Award Policies and Procedures Guide, or the PAPPG, a document NSF publishes annually. Always make certain that you're referring to the most current version of the PAPPG. The PAPPG includes a proposal preparation section with information that is critical, such as allowable font sizes, margins, and specific requirements for proposal components. The PAPPG is available on the nsf.gov website. To locate the current PAPPG on the nsf.gov website, type 20-1 in the search box. You can sign up online to receive publications from NSF, and once you do, then you'll be notified when important new NSF documents are published. Okay, so to begin your proposal, you must first log in to research.gov. The same login, NSF number, and password are used for FastLane and research.gov. You'll choose F where you see the red arrow that says FastLane Proposal Functions. Initiate a new proposal in the FastLane template system. FastLane is the online system that works most efficiently for submitting NSF proposals. In another year or so, research.gov will replace FastLane as the primary online proposal and grantee communication system for all NSF grantees. Note that research.gov is a NSF website. Don't confuse this with the grants.gov that is not. There are many good reasons for using FastLane instead of grants.gov when submitting grant proposals. Yep, I just did that again. I'm sorry. Data and information entered into the online system will look quite different in a hard copy. We will use some screenshots to show you where to input information and how forms look once completed. You will be clicking the Go button to complete each form. We will go through each of the forms individually. You will use all the Go buttons in the first part of the FastLane proposal preparation system. Please note there are 2 supplementary docs entries that apply to most first-time proposers. This is also one single copy document requirement. There are a few items that you will not need to worry about when completing forms. The Go buttons for items such as the mentoring plan, deviation authorization, and suggested reviewers are not applicable to ATE proposals. Okay, I think I might have gone too far here. I'm so sorry. My mouse is not working well for me today, and I apologize. The cover sheet. All right, I'm back on track. Here are some tips for completing the cover sheet information. The cover sheet provides NSF with a concise summary of all of the administrative data about the proposal. Included is a requirement for college certification that all statements in the proposal are true and that the proposer will follow the appropriate federal grant regulations. A question and checkbox completed by the AOR for the college constitutes an electronic signature on behalf of the institution. So note there is no actual physical or electronic signature required. Another note, the AOR must get all the way to the bottom of the cover sheet section and end of the page to reach this critically important authorization questions. Only the AOR has the permission granted by the college and set up in advance in FastLane to check off on the certification authorization in the online system. There is no grace period for doing this. If this certification isn't complete when the proposal is submitted prior to the deadline, the proposal will be returned without review. This screenshot shows how you first select the appropriate NSF solicitation for your proposal. This year, it is the AT solicitation number 18-571. Next, you should indicate the NSF unit DUE, or Division of Undergraduate Education and Advanced Technological Education Program. At this time, the majority of AT proposals, including small grants for institutions new to ATE, will be submitted in the ATE projects track. Indicate ATE projects in the For Consideration by NSF box. Although small grants for institutions new to ATE is designated by NSF as a separate funding track within ATE, FastLane does not yet provide the funding choice in the online system. For this reason, the program officers recommend that you specify the special funding track in your project summary. Begin your project summary by stating that you are applying for a small grant for institutions new to ATE. Then you can state the purpose of your proposal and other information about the project. This will help program officers place your proposal with the correct panels for review. Proposals in the small grants for institutions new to ATE are reviewed together, and they are reviewed separately from other funding tracks within the ATE program. Most often, the grantee organization or fiscal agent of the grant is the same as the performing organization, which is where the grant will be implemented. When this is not the case, you will need to specify the location of the fiscal agent as well as the location of the performing organization. Also, new to ATE or any other ATE project should note as the funding mechanism to be research other than rapid or eager. If in doubt, call Mentor Connect, ask your mentor, or call an NSF program officer. Getting your proposal in the right category for review is very important. Projects invariably take longer than you think they will. It's a good idea to request the maximum time allowed for the type of grant you are requesting, typically 36 months, which is 3 years. Note the duration of the grant you are requesting in months should be in whole year equivalents, 24 months for 2 years, 36 months for 3 years. So, under proposed duration, you will likely indicate 36 months for your 3-year project. The amount requested is also a very important component in helping make sure your proposal is sent to the appropriate panel. For example, small grants are $300,000 or less. The total from your cumulative budget will be in the number that appears on the cover sheet as the amount of funding being requested. Important, remember that indirect costs are required for each budget and must be included within the budget maximum for the type of proposal you are seeking. If you request more than $300,000, a proposal intended for the small grants for institutions new to ATE are likely to be placed in review panels with the larger, more competitive pool of ATE projects. This will reduce your chances of funding by as much as 40 to 50%. Your proposal number becomes your grant number if the proposal is funded. Knowing your proposal and grant number is very helpful at every stage. This is how you will locate your proposal when you work in Fastlane or research.gov. This is also how you identify your proposal when communicating with program officers. We collect these proposal numbers from participants in each Mentor Connect cohort to help us track the status of proposal awards. NSF is most likely to set your start date for your project on the date you have selected. Consider what will work with your business office and work plan. Most proposals have start dates between June 1 and September 1. Consider the time it will take to get faculty release worked out and when you want it to start. So if you receive your award notification in May and you selected a start date of September 1, you will have all summer to get this all worked out. Choosing a mid-semester start date will make it difficult or impossible to get people started working with the grant support. Don't choose a date that's too early in the calendar year. This could result in receipt of your award notice on or after your requested start date, which puts you behind from day one. Don't expect to be able to change that start date once it's set by NSF in your award. On the screen, you will notice that there are several checked boxes. As you submit to the ATE track, the example here shows the appropriate selections. A first-time principal investigator should indicate this by selecting Beginner Investigator. You don't insert information directly into the cover sheet. You submit information elsewhere, and Fastlane populates the cover sheet. The place to provide information for the cover sheet isn't always obvious, so be diligent about locating the data entry point. If this is not done carefully, you can end up with a PI or co-PI names on the cover sheet with no associated email address, phone number, or other information that's important to include. And to a reviewer, that looks sloppy. Do this work diligently and always print pages to ensure that they look the way you intended before submission. Keep in mind that the information on this page has been pulled from forms you filled out elsewhere in the online system. To make corrections or edits, you will need to go back to the data entry point where that information was requested. This is what the cover sheet certification page looks like when printed. It is quite different from the information looked when you inserted it in various places in Fastlane forms. These are some more tips and tricks for the cover sheet. It's important to remember that the cover sheet is where you will enter the title of your project. Don't use the NSF name or acronym in a project title, and strive for something that's descriptive and meaningful. For example, teaching and learning innovations to improve success rates in manufacturing programs, or bridge to nanotechnology. Don't be cute or demeaning. Avoid awkward or misleading titles chosen specifically to create one of those clever acronyms for your project. Missing contact information for the PI or co-PI sends a message to reviewers that you haven't paid attention to details. This form provides the reader or reviewer a quick glimpse of the discipline, the type of college submitting the proposal, a 2- or 4-year, potential numbers and kinds of population who will be impacted, and an indication of the kind of proposal in the broadest terms. Pay attention to this section on other institutions involved in the project. This could include other organizations, businesses, or partner colleges and high schools. If your plan includes working with others outside of your college to achieve your objectives, this outreach and collaboration will be viewed positively by reviewers. Be thoughtful about the number of impacted people in different categories that you see at the bottom of the screen. Do not underreport your anticipated impact. Ask yourself this question. If a reviewer divides the amount of money being requested by the number of people you anticipate impacting, will this project look like a good investment? Give some thought to the numbers you report in this section and keep a record of your calculations in providing these numbers, as reviewers or NSF program offers may ask for details prior to funding. This is the table of contents, and it's a freebie. FastLane automates this portion of the proposal. Keep in mind that where you input data will look a bit different than the print-ready page. I'm going to send it over to Mike for any questions that have come through the question box. Mike?
Thanks, Emery. Everybody, as I promised, we're going to do something a little bit different today. I'm going to turn on my video camera, and then we're going to play Stump the Panelists. We just tried that today. You know, today's bandwidth is a little bit challenging, but hopefully you can see me. There I am. There's actually a person behind that voice. Hi, everybody. Here's my first question. Emery, there was a lot of discussion in the chat window about sponsored research officers and, by their other name, the authorized organizational representative. So here's a question for you, Emery, and then we'll also ask Elaine to chime in. I'm at a small college. How do I know who my AOR is, or my SRO? How do I know them? Do I Google them? How do I find out who they are at my organization? I don't know right now.
Most of the times the AOR and the SOR, they serve as the voice of the organization for submitting any kind of grant proposal. So it could be your grant writer.
Yes.
I would think your business office would also be informed. Elaine, do you have anything to add with that?
Yeah, definitely start with your grants office. Anybody who writes grants for your college. There are community colleges who do not have grants offices, in which case there may be a chief academic officer or somebody at the college that does submit grants for the college. Just you need to find out who that person is, and that person will need to work with you to determine who will have this role for your NSF grants. Somebody needs to be in that role. That person has a lot of authority on behalf of the college, has to set up a lot of things in FastLane, give permissions to other people to be able to access different functions in FastLane. For instance, your business office to draw down funds if you get a grant award. It's a very important role, and so somebody needs to be in that role, and it needs to be somebody with the authority to act on behalf of the college.
You know, thank you, Elaine. I know for a small new to AT grant, as you said, there sometimes isn't a program officer, at least one that you can identify readily. So thanks for those comments. But do that early. I think that's the main thing. Get that settled early, because it's they who will press go once your proposal is ready. That's right, isn't it, Elaine? Okay, let's go to a second question. Emery, back to you. Can you have more than one SRO?
No, I don't believe so. I
AOR?
think there's only one that can do the submission. Most colleges will just have one representative with that. I hope that is correct.
Yeah, that's true. You do need
you
need a lead person, Mike.
Another question for you.
But it is always a good idea to have a second person who knows how to access the system, has passwords to get into the system, and can make changes. We could tell you any number of horror stories where only one person had that that authority and had the logins necessary to get into the FastLane system, and something happened to that individual, and the college was just kind of dead in the water, so to speak. It's extremely difficult to get unlocked if you get locked up like that. So always have a backup plan and somebody else that's got that information, although only one person will be submitting the grant on behalf of the college.
Well, Elaine, as long as I have you on, this question came up about talking and identifying a program officer. Do you mean while I'm preparing my proposal, I can actually send an email to one of the NSF program officers with a question and they'll respond?
Yes. And they're very good about doing this. They like to communicate with potential grantees. And you can communicate with them all the way up until your proposal is submitted, which is different than some other funding agencies where that kind of communication with program officers is not allowed prior to the submission of the proposal. But they're very user friendly. It's the way we like to describe them. They like to hear from potential grantees, and they like to.
I think that's a great part of the program, the availability of those program officers to help. I think the one question they don't like, Elaine, is what should I send you as a good idea? I don't think they like that question, do they? So here's another one for you. I think we should turn this one back to Emory. Emory, you talked about Fastlane, research.gov, and grants.gov, and I just want to clarify that these forms you're showing us today, they're filled out and submitted via Fastlane, right?
Yes, sir. Fastlane
okay,
is
because that was one of the questions.
Yes.
Just want to make sure we had that in place. All right, cool. There's a couple of other questions in the chat, and I'll probably let our colleagues respond to them in the interest of time. So it's fun turning on the video camera today. Let me disable that for a second, and then we'll go ahead. There, I'm moving me aside. Good. Let's go ahead and invite
Okay, so
Ellen.
I'll be talking about the project summary. So you'll want to think of this as essentially your one-pager. It's a summary of the project that includes an overview and, most importantly, a statement on the intellectual merit and broader impacts of your proposal. So Fastlane will actually prompt you to enter this information in 3 separate text boxes. You're required to submit all information in all 3. Your project summary in total should be no more than 1 page, and the total number of characters that will be accepted totaling all 3 text boxes is 4,600 characters. So if you prepare your project summary in a Word doc, you can then cut and paste the appropriate pieces into the text boxes. However, there sometimes can be difficulty with character counts when cutting and pasting. So if you get repeated errors, you may have to resort to actually typing the text directly into the text box. And you'll also want to definitely proofread. If you've cut and paste possessives, as an example, can sometimes translate into different characters. So you will need to work within these text boxes. This is the form. NSF will only accept the project summary as an uploaded separate document if it contains special characters such as mathematical symbols or Greek letters. So if your proposal requires the use of special characters, you would need to check the box on the project summary screen that indicates you would upload it as a supplementary document. But again, note it's not typical for ATE project summaries to have special characters. So you will be working with these text boxes for this form. Again, you'll be breaking down the summary into 3 parts. Your overview, and this is a clear, you should clearly indicate in the first few sentences the disciplinary focus of the project, the kinds of activities proposed, whether it be curriculum adaptation, professional development, and the primary audience for those activities. You need to get right to the point of your grant and explain your proposal's objectives and what you'll do to achieve them. And as a general rule, you don't want to use this space to build a rationale for your project or describe your college or your community environment or state the amount of money you're requesting. It really is a clear, concise overview. As Elaine referred to in the opening slides, this is your elevator speech. If this is all someone reads about your project, they should be able to understand what you're trying to do and your desired outcomes. And NSF uses this information to assign the proposal to a panel for review. There's also intellectual merit and broader impacts, and you're going to see that a lot. You want to make sure you understand what NSF means by those terms by studying the criteria provided in the RFP and the PAPPG. You do not have to address all the criteria listed by NSF in the ATE program, but you should plan to align with at least some of what's provided to prospective grantees. So when talking about intellectual merit, you're going to be looking at the potential of your proposed activities to advance knowledge. When talking about broader impacts, you're going to look at the potential of your activities to benefit society. So the ATE request for proposals, again, helps to refine this criteria further in a separate section on merit review principles and criteria. So examples that you can address in your proposal, taken straight from the RFP around intellectual merit. Does the project have the potential for improving student learning in science or engineering technician education programs? Are the goals, objectives, and outcomes in the plans and procedures for achieving them worthwhile, well-developed, and realistic? Under broader impacts, as an example, has an assessment of workforce needs for technicians been conducted? Does the project work with employers to address their current and future needs? Will the project's results be widely disseminated? So again, be sure to pay close attention to these when crafting your intellectual merit and broader impact statements. So project descriptions. You have your one-page elevator speech as your project summary, and now you have your project description. And this is the heart of your proposal. This is the narrative that Elaine referred to. And this is where you provide a clear statement of the work and activities that you are striving to undertake. So it should address, again, what you want to do, why you want to do it, how you plan to do it, how you'll know if you're successful, and what the benefits and impacts will result from a successful project. So this means you're including the project's motivating rationale, goals, objectives, deliverables, activities, as well as a timeline, a management plan, the roles and responsibilities of the PIs, co-PIs, and other senior personnel, a sustainability plan, an evaluation plan, and a dissemination plan, and that's all wrapped up into 15 pages. So on the screen here is the actual quote-unquote form in FastLane for the project description, because you would be preparing this in Word and uploading the project description as a PDF or in another word processor file. FastLane will convert it to a PDF for you. Once converted and uploaded, you will want to make sure there were no conversion issues and just take a look at that work. In terms of takeaways, there's a few tips in preparing your project description. These may seem basic, but they're actually very crucial to the success of your proposal. You do want to pay attention to font size and layout and the size of your document. The length of the project description, as I mentioned, must fit into 15 pages with 1-inch margins on all sides. So once uploaded, it's a good idea, again, to check that you've not exceeded this. And while the PAPPG, your grants guide, allows for a minimum font of 10-point in specific fonts, such as Arial and Courier, Mentor Connect, we recommend you use an 11 or 12-point standard font to ensure readability. If you use Times New Roman, for example, the PAPPG requires an 11-point font. We encourage you to use section headings, bullets, or charts to ensure a clear proposal and readability. And note that any visuals you include in your proposal must be included in that 15-page limitation. And you do want to think about the reviewer when you're putting this together. Your reviewers may be reading up to 12 proposals. Yours could be the last one they're reading, late at night. And if you're using very, very small font or a poor layout, or you don't clearly address the topics in the solicitation, it's not going to encourage a good rating. As another point on formatting, you do not use automated endnotes. You number your references, and then you list them in a separate reference section, which doesn't count towards your page limit. And I'll go over references cited a little later in this webinar. So again, you're going to want to make sure to follow grant guidelines for what the project description should address in addition to paying attention to formatting. There are actually some required sections within the project description. You must begin your project description with a section called Results from Prior Support, if applicable. You would, as the majority of you are new to NSF funding, it would not be applicable, but you still need to open your project description, including results of prior support, even if you don't have any. If a PI or a co-PI identified on the project has received prior NSF funding or funding from another source, and those awards pertain to the scope of work you're seeking to undertake in your new proposal, you would need to provide information on them in this results of prior support. And this subsection would include specific outcomes and results, including metrics to demonstrate the impact of those prior project activities. But again, if you have no prior support, you still need to list that you have no prior support, but we encourage those of you that are on this webinar that are part of Mentor Connect to mention that you're part of the Mentor Connect cohort. So again, even if you have no prior results to share, you include that section, and it's nice to say you were part of Mentor Connect there as well. In addition to having results of prior support, your project description also needs to include a section titled Broader Impacts and Intellectual Merit, where you address those criteria as we discussed in the project summary. And you also need a section labeled Evaluation Plan. and you would include detailed information on the aspects of the project to be evaluated, the data sources and methods used, and how those plans would be incorporated to improve the project. And if you need additional information on evaluation plans and resources in that regard, the Mentor Connect library has a host of resources, and Emery will talk about how to access that at the end of the webinar. So biographical sketches. So bio sketches are required for each individual on a proposal identified as senior personnel, including your PIs and your co-PIs. And as of June 1, there are 2 ways to submit a bio sketch to NSF. So one is through uploading a bio sketch through a site in partnership with the National Institutes of Health, which really serves more the needs of the research community. And the second option for submission, and the one that we are recommending, is to use a fillable PDF form. So NSF has a new fillable PDF, which is the template for the bio sketch. And this can be completed and uploaded into Fastlane. So again, there are very specific guidelines around what, I'm sorry? There are very specific guidelines of what goes into a bio sketch. They should be no more than 2 pages. Again, 1 per senior personnel, and it's uploaded as a separate document. As a tip, you could have 1 person working on your grant to check and upload all the bio sketches for consistency. And this is something you can complete early and get up now while you work on other parts of your proposal. At the bottom of this slide is the web link that takes you directly to where you can download the fillable PDF to create your bio sketch and to upload it into Fastlane. The components of the bio sketch are outlined on this slide. You do not include personal information. It's really looking at the components that address education and experience to run the grant project. So you would provide your professional preparation, and they give a very distinct way you would do that by listing the institution, location, major area of study, the degree if applicable, and the year. Your appointments, so listing in reverse chronological order all of the individual's academic and professional appointments, beginning with current employment, including the time frame, position, title, organization, and location. So products. So there are 2 sections on this PDF for products most closely related to the project, and other significant products, whether or not related to the proposed project. And what we're talking about here is a place to list up to 5 products. Acceptable products must be citable, accessible, and include but not be limited to things like publications, data sets, software, patents, copyrights. Unacceptable products would be things that are unpublished documents, not yet submitted, invited lectures, but only a list of 10. So if you've got 5 and 5, only 10 are used in the review of the proposal, and you must include full citation information. And just as a note, if you do not have products or publications to share, that is okay. This bio sketch format has been created to also serve the needs of the research community applying for NSF funding. So again, it's okay if you don't have anything to list in this particular section. Then we have synergistic activities, and this is where you would provide a list of up to 5 examples that demonstrate the broader impact of the individual's professional or scholarly activities as it relates to what you're proposing to do. So this is a place to talk about the individual's skills and assets. Some examples of things that you could include here might be innovations in teaching and training, development of curricular materials, broadening the participation of groups underrepresented in STEM, service to the scientific or engineering community outside of the individual's immediate organization. Some other thoughts, if you've worked as a subrecipient of an ATE Center grant, or if you've been working with other ATE projects or primary partners, you could list that here. Or if you have membership or participation in a professional society, such as the Council on Undergraduate Research or the American Mathematical Association of Two-Year Colleges, if it relates to your proposed activities. So that's a note on bio sketches. And now I believe I turn it over to Elaine to talk about current and pending support.
Thank you, Ellen. Current and pending support forms are required. And please note that this is that requirements for this form have been updated. The new ones go into effect June the 1st with the new PAPPG 20-1. Again, you have 2 options for how you do this. We are recommending you use the fillable PDF form provided by NSF. The other option is provided by the National Institutes of Health and must be completed in a completely different system. The PAPPG 20-1 provides additional information about these two options. So why have this form? NSF wants people in senior personnel roles, and I noticed there was a question in the chat box about that. Your principal investigator, your co-principal investigators, and you may have one or you may have multiple ones. And there is a third category that is just simply called senior personnel. That's someone else that's going to be on your leadership team, but is neither a PI nor a co-PI. That constitutes a senior personnel. There was a question about your evaluator. Your evaluator should not be a member of your project team. The evaluator should be external to the project, and you will address your evaluator in a different section of the proposal, different section of your budget, and so forth. So your evaluator would never be senior personnel. So NSF wants the people in these senior personnel roles working on grants to have dedicated time to do this work. Current and pending support forms show NSF how much of your time is committed or will be committed to funded projects and other commitments. This helps program officers determine the capacity of an individual to take on the proposed scope of work if the project is funded. This reporting must include projects supported by all funding sources and not just NSF. The expectation is that any person working on a grant will either be paid directly by the grant or that the person will be released from a portion of his or her teaching or other workload to do grant work. When release time is used, grant funds may be used to pay replacement faculty or other personnel. A combination of these payment methods is possible. For example, a faculty member may receive release time during the academic year, but be paid directly to work on a grant in the summer when he or she may not normally be under contract to the college. Anyone serving in a PI, co-PI, or senior personnel role must have a current and pending support form or forms included in the proposal. This includes anyone working on the grant in one of these roles who is paid by your college, even if the person is not an employee of the college. How the person is paid as an employee or a consultant is not important. The person's leadership role in the grant triggers the requirement for current and pending support forms. It is important to know what NSF means by current and pending. Current refers to grants already awarded, not the one you're currently preparing. A pending proposal is one that either hasn't been submitted or a proposal that's been submitted but for which the funding decision is not yet known. The proposal you have in progress now for October submission is considered pending support. Let's now talk about how many of these current and pending support forms you will need to prepare. For each person, there must be a current and pending support form for each proposed or ongoing project for which the person has a time commitment, including the proposal you're preparing. This means that every person included in your proposal in a PI, co-PI, or senior personnel role will have at least one current and pending support form, even if this is your first NSF ATE proposal. The Proposal and Award Policies and Procedure Guide, the PAPPG, tells us that current and pending support forms must include all current project support from whatever source. The PAPPG cites as examples federal, state, local, or foreign government agencies, public or private foundations, industrial, or other commercial organizations. Please note that the PAPPG also states that the proposed project and all other projects or activities requiring a portion of the PI or other senior personnel's time must be included, even if the person will receive no salary support from the project or projects. The new current and pending support form provides for non-compensated commitments to be reported as in-kind contributions. If this is your first grant, you may only have one current and pending support form to submit for each person. However, be careful to check to be sure that these individuals are not working on other funded projects such as Department of Labor grants or state-funded grants or perhaps foundation-funded grants, as these will need to be reported. We recommend that you use the fillable PDF form that NSF provides for preparing current and pending support forms. The instructions for this form are depicted on the screen. Note that the form provides for both project proposal entries, which I've marked with a green arrow, and in-kind contribution entries, which I've marked with a red arrow. Beware of the in-kind contributions and entries. If you report uncompensated time commitments using this portion of the form, do not include any dollar amount, although there is a place provided for this information. This form is also used by NSF programs for which cost sharing is required or allowed. However, cost sharing is expressly prohibited in the ATE program. This screen shows the actual template that you will complete for each person and each project. Several changes have been made from the previous version. Proposal start and end dates require only month and year. Additional categories of proposal status are provided as options, but are not likely to be applicable to ATE projects. One significant change is that the time commitment is now to be reported for each year of the project, and person months may be reported to 2 decimal places. Some of you will notice that a previous requirement to specify time by calendar months, academic months, or summer months has been eliminated. The time reporting requirement in the new form is the person's total time commitment in a calendar year. Now let's talk about the information that you will need to supply on the current and pending support forms. Here is the information that you will need for each current and pending support form that you complete. The project proposal title is pretty self-explanatory. Support type, that's where you indicate current or pending. The award number, if it's known, generally that'll be for current projects that have already been funded. The source of support, this is asking who is currently funding or who is being asked to fund the project. Typical sources include the National Science Foundation, Department of Labor, U.S. Department of Education, the state such as California, or a foundation such as the Lumina Foundation. The project location, this is your institution's location or the location of another organization if someone on your team is working on a funded project not based at your college. The start date, you will list as the actual start date for an already funded project or your requested start date for a proposed project. And this is just given by month and year, no day indication. For the ending date, it's the same information. Total award amount must include indirect costs, and this is the total budget being requested or the total grant amount previously awarded. Person months per year committed to the project. NSF requires individual time commitments to be reported in person months. It is easy to make mistakes in calculating a person's time commitment to report it this way. So I'm going to provide you with a few examples to help you with this. Person months represent the cumulative time a person will spend on the project over the year. It does not consider the spread of that work over time. In the first example, we have a 12-month employee who dedicates 10 months of his or her time to grant work. The number you should put in the current and pending support form is 1.2 person months, which is 10% of 12 months. Next, consider a faculty member who is working on an academic contract. Typically, these contracts are for 9 months, but they may vary by institution. This is where your math skills will be needed because all time must be listed in person months. Some translation will be required. For example, if a faculty member typically teaches 5 courses per semester and this person will be provided with 1 course release time to work on the grant, both fall and spring semesters, That is considered 1/5 of the person's workload, or 20% release time. Calculate 20% of the months covered by the academic year contract. In this example, I assumed a 9-month contract, a full-time teaching load of 5 classes, and 1 course release time per semester to be provided by the grant. This will be 1.8 person months for the year. If the release time for this person is just for 1 semester instead of both semesters, then you would report half as much time in months, or 0.90 person months for the year. Now let's consider a situation where a teacher who had 1 course release time for both fall and spring semesters is also going to work on the grant in the summer. For example, the summertime commitment could be 2 weeks or a half a month, which will be reported as 0.50 person months. In this case, the faculty member has the release time we calculated on the previous slide in the fall and spring, but this faculty member will also work the 1/2 month in the summer, in years 1 and 2 of a 3-year project. Note that this time isn't budgeted for the summer of the 3rd year. This enables me to show you how different times can be reported for different years of the project. You will notice that by adding 1/2 month makes the faculty member's total time commitment 2.30 person months in years 1 and 2, and 1.8 person months in year 3. I noted with a red arrow the year in which the person's total time is different. You will be able to provide specifics about how the faculty member's time will be divided over the year in the proposal and/or in your budget justification. This slide shows you the URL to access the new current and pending support form. Also, the web link to access an NSF PowerPoint presentation about all changes in the 20-1 PAPPG. I realize that these web link addresses are long. If you are unable to capture this information from this screen at this time, you will be able to easily access this information from the tutorial that will be provided for today's webinar. So to wrap up this section, it is important to note that although the PAPPG mentions limiting faculty time to 2 summer months, this limitation does not apply to ATE grants, as long as the time requested is considered reasonable for the scope of work described. Even so, if you plan to request more than 2 months faculty time in your proposal, you may want to contact an ATE program officer prior to finalizing your proposal and your budget. Always keep in mind that personnel time on grants needs to be reasonable and aligned with the work that the person will be doing. Reviewers expect to see key personnel included in the budget with compensation for time they will devote to the grant. Beware of having personnel donate time to grant-funded projects. Reviewers will be skeptical and may doubt that the scope of work will actually be able to be completed. If the proposal does not include grant-supported personnel with specific responsibilities for completing the scope of work, reviewers will be looking for faculty time and a corresponding budget request to support that time. Also be aware that donated time may be considered voluntary committed cost sharing, which is prohibited. So at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Ellen, who will tell you about several other important forms.
Thanks, Elaine. We are noting that there are questions in chat, so we'll have a question break after this next section, and I know Elaine can address some of those as well. So I just want to make you aware we do see those and we'll respond. So I will be talking about the facilities, equipment, and other resources form. So this is used to describe any internal and external resources that the organization and its collaborators will provide to the project should it be funded. So it's really designed to assess the organizational resources available to perform your proposed scope of work. And it provides an opportunity to explain your infrastructure, laboratories, equipment at your institution or perhaps at your partner's institution that will be available for use to support the success of the project. So keep in mind that you shouldn't use this space to describe all the capabilities of your college, only those relevant to the project to help NSF assess what resources you have available. So the information provided on this form should be narrative in nature and not include any financial information. The form offers the following categories for submitting information, so laboratory, clinical, animal, computer, office, other, and major equipment. For ATE grants, the clinical and animal categories are typically not applicable, and you may indicate this on the form as has been done in the example on the screen. So to give some examples about how the other categories could be used, for laboratory support, this is often quite important for the successful implementation of an ATE grant. And if this is the case for your proposal, you'll want to describe your current capability, even if the proposal includes some improvements or equipment additions. Under computer capability, this can also be essential for your grant, especially if the project focuses on IT, cybersecurity, and any number of other advanced technologies that are computer dependent and will make use of your computing capability and computer labs at your institution. Office support is also important to describe since budget guidelines specify that grant budgets may not include office furnishings or everyday office equipment such as computers, copiers, and items that support normal office operations. So the personnel implementing the grant, however, will need office support to do so. So if your institution is providing dedicated office space, access to administrative support, or similar items, this is a good place to make a statement about that support. In the other section, this is where you can describe resources other than facilities and equipment, such as personnel support. So, for example, this is a place where you can describe the talent you have assembled to serve as an internal advisory committee, or perhaps you have a college recruiter lined up who will support the outreach activities of your grant, but who will not receive compensation from the grant for doing so. A third example of personnel you may want to describe in this section could be an institutional researcher who will help with internal evaluation and data collection. So in other words, if someone will be working to support your project without compensation, this is the place to describe that donated time. But don't assign a monetary value to the donated time or state a specific time commitment. Under major equipment, this also can be an important category for some ATE grants. Advanced technology programs are often very equipment intensive, and so your institution may have major equipment that will be used to implement the grant, or you may have a partner university or industry partner working with you that is providing major equipment for your students. Again, you could have a partner that has access to an electron microscope or a clean room that will be used in your teaching. If major equipment like this is involved in the success of your project, this is the place where you can describe the availability of these resources being provided by that education or that industry partner. References cited, so I talked about this when we were talking about the project description. So if you cite materials in your project narrative, you would list your source material in this separate references section. NSF expects you to do some research in the process of developing a grant proposal. So like most funding sources, they encourage the use of research-based strategies and adaptation and implementation from previously funded NSF ATE or other projects. So your references indicate that you've investigated what others have done and what has worked. So you'll want to cite references that explain outcomes that led you to select a particular strategy, curriculum, teaching methodology, or other promising or proven approach to address the challenges that you're wanting to meet in technician education. And your reference citations are also used to cite the sources of the data that you provided in describing your project rationale. So as you include information from your research, you will want to manually number your references throughout your project description, and then prepare a separate document with citations that correspond to those numbers that would be uploaded into FastLane in this references section. And again, just a reminder that this does not count toward your 15-page project description. A data management plan. So including a data management plan is required for ATE proposals. You'll need to prepare a supplementary document of no more than 2 pages labeled data management plan, and you would upload it. The screen capture is what it would look like in FastLane. This document shows this document should describe how the proposal will conform to NSF policy on the dissemination and sharing of your project's results. So in essence, NSF expects that you're going to share the outcomes of your work. You're expected to share primary data, samples, and supporting materials from your grant projects. And your data management plan will be reviewed as part of the intellectual merit and or broader impacts of your proposal. So your plan should specify the types of data and other materials and products that will be generated or collected by the project, how that data will be stored, protected, and appropriately shared, how what is generated will be preserved during and beyond the project, and how others will be able to access the materials coming out of your project. So on the screen here is a sample data management plan that was prepared for a small grant for institutions new to ATE. Mentor Connect has sample proposals in our online resource collection for examples of data management plans. And in addition, NSF provides a detailed frequently asked questions on data management plans. The URL is provided on the slide, and as Elaine said, you'll get these slides with these URLs as well. Next, we move to supplemental documents. So this section is not considered an appendix. There are some required supplemental documents to include. One is the data management plan, which I just discussed, and also is a list of all known people, aside from your participants and students, who will receive compensation from the project and their affiliation, which would need to be uploaded under other supplementary documents into Fastlane. So again, you need to provide a list of all people receiving compensation from the project, aside from senior personnel, participants, and students, and their affiliations. Some of these people may not be from your college. And so this is an area to really look for consistency. This list needs to be consistent with your budget and your budget justification and in your current and pending support forms. So in other words, you don't want to list someone in the supplemental document who's receiving compensation from your grant whose function hasn't been addressed in the project description or the budget. Letters of collaboration. So letters of collaboration are required through the ATE program solicitation. So this is a good example where the PAPPG and the ATE program solicitation differ a little bit. In the grant proposal guide, there's a very boilerplate short paragraph that you can use for letters of collaboration, that the ATE program solicitation requires actual letters and really wants to ensure that they are demonstrating collaboration and commitment. They want to see documentation of commitments described in the proposal, such as an industry partner pledging resources or time to the project. The letter should outline specific collaborations, not merely be letters of support. So letters that just endorse the project or offer non-specific support should not be included, and if they are, your proposal could be returned without review. So again, you want to make sure these are letters of collaboration, letters of commitment that demonstrate clear goods, services, time that someone is going to commit to your project should it be funded. And a third supplemental document, the ATE proposal solicitation, asks that you include a biosketch of your external evaluator as a supplemental document if that person is named in your project description. And then we have what they call a single copy document, collaborators and other affiliations. And this is required that you use, it's a NSF, another NSF provided template available on their website to list collaborators and affiliations for any senior personnel on the project. So the template includes listing the name and affiliation of the individual of the last 12 months, and collaborations on projects such as funded grants, research, articles, report, or paper collaborations in the last 48 months. So this template has been developed to be fillable. However, the content and format requirements cannot be altered by the user, or it'll cause errors and impact how it's viewed upon submission. So it has to be uploaded in this Excel format, directly uploaded into Fastlane in the single copy document tab, and then NSF Fastlane will convert it into PDF. So again, there's a URL here where to access this form, and this form is really a document that's used by NSF to determine review panels for the proposals. So they're looking to see who your close collaborators and affiliators are. So obviously there will be no conflict of interest when assigning people to panel reviews. And some general Fastlane advice, start early, so now is not too soon. Review what you've written several times, have others review it as well. Don't be afraid to ask questions, which is the big key. And you can ask questions of your mentors at the Mentor Connect team concerning these forms, particularly as we get into some of the nitty-gritty of these. We know this can be overwhelming, but we're here to help. And with that, I believe we have a question break.
Ellen, it's Mike. I'm just checking my audio. How do I sound?
You sound great.
I'm sorry, I had a little glitch there in my audio connection. I have a question for you. I'm at a small college, new to ATE, and my dean wants me to put her in as co-PI at zero cost. She thinks that's a good idea. Do you think that's a good idea?
I think particularly for a co-PI, that's not a good idea. These are people that are going to be contributing significant time to the project and should be included in a compensation plan.
Okay, you know, sometimes that happens, so I appreciate that. One more question for you, Ellen. When we're thinking about senior personnel or personnel line, can you put an adjunct faculty in there?
You could put an adjunct faculty in there. Certainly there's not restrictions on who can be a PI, co-PI, or senior personnel. Certainly you're looking to have the investment of full-time faculty, but there have been adjunct faculty that have been senior personnel or even co-PIs.
Okay, so adjuncts are fine, because one of the other questions that came up is, can I pay part-time faculty? And I think pretty much we mean adjuncts by that. So you can use, I'd like you to clarify if you can, that you can use grant funds to pay overload time for part-time faculty. It's complicated.
Well, it wouldn't be overload time for part-time faculty, Mike. The overload would apply to
Right.
full-time faculty, and it is permissible. I did put a response in the chat box about this. We received clarification from NSF on this not too long ago. And it is permissible, but in your budget justification where you are requesting funds to pay overload or where you're going to have faculty on overload working on the grant, you should specify the college policy and procedures that will be followed. The policy and procedures must apply to all faculty doing similar work at the college. And not be specific for those working on an NSF grant.
Well, thanks, Ellen. Another question for you. It's about this 2-month thing, and I'm sorry, you might have responded to this when I was temporarily blocked here, but the question is that 2 months a limit, or can you ask for more than 2 months of support?
You can ask for more than 2 months of support. There is the expectation that any request will be very well justified. But in the ATE program, you may budget more than 2 months for the faculty working on these projects, or personnel working on these projects. It needs to be a very close alignment with the scope of work, what they're going to be doing, when they're going to be doing it. Like the example I gave of a faculty member doing some of the work during the academic year and then perhaps coming in, they may be doing summer workshops or whatever in the summer. We realize that these faculty very often need more than 2 months in the year to get this work done, and it is permissible in the ATE program, but must be very well justified. And it does appear to be in conflict with the PAPPG, but we have confirmed this with the program officers in the ATE program, and what I'm sharing with you is what they said for us to share with you.
Hi, Elaine. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, I think that Mike said he was kicked out, so I'm going to jump in and play Mike for a minute. I was just kicked out earlier with audio, but Emily's asking a question on the required language in the PAPPGs, and I think I had mentioned when they talk about letters of collaboration in the PAPPG, it's a very canned boilerplate small paragraph, but she's asking for clarification on specific letters of commitment in relation to the ATE program solicitation. Can those be detailed and talk about what the partner is contributing to the project beyond just this canned paragraph that the PA-PPG states.
For ATE, you absolutely do not want to use the canned, very brief version that's outlined in the PA-PPG. The ATE program is looking for unique letters. They don't want copycat letters. If you had, 10 letters from industry and they all look exactly the same and state exactly the same thing, reviewers react badly to that. They want these letters to be unique. They want them to be specific to what that particular partner, industry, academic partner, whoever it is that's going to help make this project successful. Outlines what they're doing. The question of what if, we have 5 industry partners and they're all going to do the same thing, which is provide internships for our students. Well, the recommendation there is that perhaps you draft a letter that states that this is what the industry commitment is, and then you literally get all of these industries to sign off on one single letter for this one type of commitment. That's another way to go about this. But putting in 5, copycat lookalike letters doesn't work. Templates don't work very well, and we've seen cases where industries would give you a letter and there was a template that you provided to them and they didn't even bother to take out the insert company name place on the letter. It's still in the letter when it goes into your proposal. So they really are looking, they're looking for the sincerity and the uniqueness and the, how genuine that partnership and that commitment and collaboration is for this project. And they want it to be very specific to the work of the project. So it's something that takes a lot of time. It's unique to the ATE program, but it will, the successful funded projects almost invariably have really good, strong
Elaine, thanks very much for that comment. We're going to have one more brief question break at the end. Let me take us forward back to Emery now, Elaine. And Emery, tell us about the project resources that you have available.
Thank you, Mike. As Elaine and Ellen mentioned before, the MentorConnect project offers a resource library that is specifically providing solutions to your grant proposal writing needs for the ATE program. Other ATE resources that may be helpful in this proposal preparation include the Compendium of Research on Technician Education found on the teachingtechnicians.org website, and then resources to guide project evaluation at the evaluate.org website, and links to ATE projects and centers, curriculum, and any other resources at the atcentral.net website. A lot of the questions that are coming in on the chat screen, you probably would be able to find some of those answers on our in our library. If you when you go to the library, you would do a search and it will pull up some information for you. Also, we want you to connect with us with MentorConnect. We have a number of ways by which you can stay in touch. You can send us an email, visit us on Facebook, or follow on Twitter, and check out our YouTube channel. We welcome any questions or follow-up that you may have. Most importantly, we encourage you to visit our website. You can call or email our help desk for answers to your questions. We do answer the phone and talk to you just like the program officers do at NSF. This webinar and the PowerPoint slides that you are viewing today will be available following the broadcast, and they'll be archived for later viewing, so you'll be able to go back there and look at that. We'll also have a tutorial that kind of will go through the content and the slides and kind of break things out into one and all the forms that you have and the instructions that have been provided. So we just want to thank you for your participation, and we look forward to hearing from you and supporting your efforts as you continue towards submission for your NSF ATE grant proposal. So I think I will send it back over to Mike. Thank you, Mike, to talk about some feedback.
Thank you, Emery. I am so happy this webinar is being recorded today because there's been so much information about all these forms that I'm going to need to review it. So thank you both, and thank you, Elaine and Ellen. Colleagues, what I'm going to do now is launch a survey. It's just 4 questions. It will appear in another browser window. You'll still hear us talking, so please listen. You can go back and forth between the browser windows, and we'll just have a few concluding remarks. So here we go. That survey is now launched, and please go ahead and take a a moment to respond to it. Remember, presenters, not to conduct on that survey. Don't close that survey, please. So as we wrap up today, let me turn back to Ellen. Ellen, if you had to say, I'm going to ask the same question of Elaine, what I'm preparing now for this October submission, I got these 73% of my project forms are overwhelming me, but I'm starting to get my team together. We're working. What's the top 1 or 2 things I should be focusing on today, Ellen? I'm now, what am I, 4 or 5 months away from the October deadline. If it was your proposal, what would you be doing today, Ellen? Ellen, there you are. Hi. Okay, I think Ellen has messaged me that she's having a little difficulty with her connection. How about if we turn that to Elaine? Go ahead, Elaine.
Mike, can you hear me? Okay. Well, I think the most important thing is to understand is that these proposals really are not solo endeavors. You really are a glutton for punishment if you try to do one of these by yourself. You really need a team. And what I would be doing right now is I would be figuring out who could be working on the forms and filling out forms while the faculty team, the people whose idea it is that this proposal is about, are working on the details of the proposal. How are we going to carry out this vision? How are we going to get this work done, and over what time frame, and what do we need to get that done? So they're thinking about what supplies, materials, or equipment they might need, what consultants they might need to bring in for faculty development or for some other reason. So you need to have some people working on parts of it and somebody else working on the other. The grants office support you have, if you have grants office support, is great for doing some of this packaging, some of these forms that go around the proposal. And if they could be working on that and letting you know what information you need as a principal investigator, or if you're on the leadership team in some other way, what they need from you. Maybe you can just give them your resume, and they can, they can draft a bio sketch from that for you and let you check it and see if it suits. There are things like that you can do to use teamwork and.
Here's my very last question, Ellen, and then Elaine, then we'll wrap up for today. I'm working like crazy on this project. I'm going to submit it for the deadline on October 1. How long do I have to wait before they tell me yes?
Well, that is it's a time frame. It's not a specific date. They typically review ATE proposals the first week in December. There are those who will hear back from a program officer with questions, which is the best thing. That's good news. If you get questions from a program officer, that's extremely good news. It means that they are considering funding your proposal. They would like to fund your proposal. So you like to get those questions, and those questions can come as early as late December. Some of the program officers work very quickly, some not as quickly. The questions will continue rolling out to prospective grantees in January and throughout the spring. There is a simultaneous track, if you will, that's happening sort of at the same time, and those are the proposals that are not going to be funded this time, and they're called declines. And so those letters telling you that that your proposal will not be funded this time will also be going through processing during that time frame, and those letters will come out in the spring as well. Awards can be made all the way through the summer up until sometime in August when they have a cutoff for funding decisions for the year. So sometime from late December through August, but kind of the sweet spot in there is most people will hear by about this time.
Well, we've all got our fingers crossed. We have our arms behind our backs, our legs are crossed, and we're hoping. So thank you, Elaine. Appreciate the presentation, all the details that you and Ellen and Emery provided. I know it's a lot of details, but critical to creation of, as you said, a professionally crafted proposal, and that will really carry you forward. Colleague, this ends the audio portion of our webinar today. In the chat window, you can give a little applause or thanks to our presenters. We'll leave the system open for a couple more minutes as we wind up today. And thank you again for joining. I look forward to seeing you and talking with you on a future Mentor Connect webinar. Goodbye, everyone.